So first of all, I've got a template that's online on the training page on the state website. So I really suggest you download this and use it. It helps with especially the organization at the top in the students writing their names down and helping you prepare the event. So I really suggest that you get that. That's in one of the links that I've sent you in a previous email. So when you're designing your lab or research-based event, first of all, there are 42 teams that are competing in your division, which means that a test should not be absolutely less than 42 questions or 42 points, because then you automatically create ties, and then you'll have to come up with a way to break those ties. So with 42 teams, I would at least recommend a 100-point question or test or activity, and really possibly even more. Make sure, again, you align your items, questions, or activities that are aligned to the rules. Make sure you've read those rules and that you don't deviate from them. When you're creating it, you want to make sure that you create it at a level that will spread the scores out over 42 teams. But make it so that you don't get a whole bunch of 100%. Because imagine if you had 2, 3, 4 teams that got 100% on your activity, we have no way of breaking ties, and we do have to break the ties, particularly for the top 20 teams. So have about a third easy, a third medium, and a third very difficult, so that you don't have 100%, a lot of 100% or any 100%, but you also get no one that's getting 0%, because again, how do you break those ties? So you do want to know how the ties are broken. Some of the rules will state how the ties are broken, so you want to look in the scoring section. But if you do, let's say you're running anatomy and physiology, and it's not defined in the rules, then you can list on the board in the room during the activity to all the teams that, let's say, question number 1 will be used to break the tie. Question number 3 will be used to break the tie. So sort of list what are the tie breaks. You could have a specific question that you use to break the ties, but make sure you post and you explain that to the teams on how the ties will be broken. If you're going to do an essay, which I don't really think is ideal because it makes it very difficult to score, makes it longer to score, but if you do, then write the question out and then write out the answer on what would be the ideal response to the essay. Then break that out into points on what would constitute an 80%. What factors in the essay response would be 60%, 40%, so on. So you want to make that as transparent as possible and objective as possible for the essays. However, again, I don't really recommend that because we have got limited time at the end of the day to be able to get the scores in, and essays tend to be very long to score. By the way, we do have zip grade that we're going to get, and so if you're going to do a lab or research based event and you want to do a test that's multiple choice, let me know and I will get you a membership to zip grade so that you can use your smartphone to actually scan from the response sheet, and it will score immediately and you'll get it into a spreadsheet, and then it'll be a lot easier for you to do. So let me know if you want to use ZipGrade. If you are doing an activity which requires calculations, of course, this would be calculations that are based on measurements that are taken in a lab situation. So let's say they have to measure, they have to measure the mass of an object, and they've got to determine the acceleration from a calculation. Well, obviously, mass has to be measured. So this means that you're going to have error introduced into these two values. And if you calculate it out, well, it's 56.7. But again, since it's a measurement situation, then you could have a little error that's built in. So you want to create a rubric that sort of accounts for error that's built into measurement. And you'd say, well, possibly in this case, if they're accurate, anywhere between 58 and 55 would receive full points of 5 points on this case. But if they were beyond 58, out to 61, or beyond 52 out from 55 to 52, maybe they only get 3 points. And if they're beyond 61 and 52, they get 0 points. So this accounts for measurement errors in these calculations. So if you're doing a lab-based event, then you might use this tactic. When you're designing the lab events, also be clear about what you want the students to do. Do stay away from tricky questions. Some of the events, they will be able to bring in binders with them. They can use those binders as part of the research, so take that into account as you're designing these activities. That would be defined in the rules if they're allowed to bring in a binder. And then also on any of the lab sheets you give them, any handouts, put a place at the top where they can write in their name and team numbers. The teams will typically pull apart their lab test, because you only give one lab test for 2 students that are in an event. So they can rip it apart. So it'd be good for them to be able to write their name and team number at the top, so that if one sheet gets lost for whatever reason, you can find and locate it. However, it's their responsibility for making sure it gets put back together, not yours. But this is good practice to have.